OT might not be the coolest thing out there, but it's absolutely the most critical thing out there because it is how we feed the nation, it's how we power the nation, it's how we have hospitals, clean drinking water, it's how we make the nation run. So if you think OT isn't where it's at, all you have to do is look around and go, everything I touch touches OT.
Welcome to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. In each episode, we dive into the world of industrial cybersecurity. Join us as we cover the latest trends, innovations, and practical insights as we talk with leaders and practitioners across the industry. Gear up and let's get into this week's episode.
Hi, this is Dino Busalacchi, and today I have with me Josh Copeland. Hi, Josh. How are you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Welcome to the show. I'm good. Thank you. I'd like to kind of usually begin a little bit about our guest, give us a little bio background on how they, from your position now, going back, moving forward, however you want to do it. Tell us about your journey in the cybersecurity space.
I have been fortunate enough to be in cybersecurity in one way or another for creeping up on 30 years, thus all the gray in the beard. Did the first 20 of that with the United States Air Force, doing pretty much anything you can imagine, IT, cybersecurity related. Retired from that in 2018, did the normal path over into Fed contracting, then jumped to state and local gov, commercial, worked with a couple of MSSPs, decided that I wanted to go teach and started teaching at Tulane University, currently in a doctoral program, doing some research around how we think and make judgments within cybersecurity. And then I'm also the deputy commander of the Cyber Reserve for the Louisiana State Guard. So doing a lot of different things and try to keep my finger on the pulse of a couple different areas. And OT is absolutely one of those areas that I find critical given my role with the State Guard, because when a natural disaster hits, OT is the thing that everyone cares about.
It absolutely is. Yeah. And so speaking of OT, maybe you could share with us a little bit about your role around OT and cybersecurity, especially I'm interested in the teaching stuff because I think that's really important. Something I've always dreamt about doing is passing along all the stuff rattling around in my head for 40 years working in technology to younger folks because I tend to think that we're a little short on resources per se that want to come into this space, but maybe you see it differently. So tell us a little bit about that.
So it's one of those things. Everyone wants to do pen testing because it's what's cool and what's quote unquote sexy, until they realize that it's 80% reports writing before they actually get to go do the fun thing and break into the system. And then it's back to 80% reports writing as soon as they do it because they have to document it. But OT is kind of that hidden gem because there's so much that needs to be done. We have so many systems that are out there in the wild, so to speak, that are water systems that are running on technology that's 30, 40 years old. I know of at least one water plant that's running on a Windows 2000 server that has never been patched, has been rebooted twice, and they're absolutely terrified to do anything with it because it's a $25 million project to replace it. And it's one of those things that it's not well understood, but it affects everyone's life, from power, water, gas, pharmaceutical, manufacturing. If you consume something, it has touched OT at some point, and that's not given the same attention that traditional IT has because we often just don't think about it as something to worry about until you get a colonial pipeline. And that's my example I use with students to go, there's this whole untapped area. And being in Louisiana, where I'm at, oil and gas is a huge industry for us. And the amount of OT that's around that, not to mention, going out and doing offshore oil rigs, that's all off network OT, low bandwidth sat shots up for connectivity. That's some huge stuff that has massive environmental consequences if it goes bad. So it needs to be protected.
Well, and that's part of the disconnect, right? ITOT, right? Connected physical systems, which are kinetic, versus data-driven applications and systems that, yeah, it's relevant and important to secure and protect those. And IT's always been good, fortunate, I think, because I've had the opportunity to do it, especially over the last 2 decades or more, to standardize, right? In the technologies that they use, the resources that, teams that they develop to tackle this, even, from the technology partners. But when you get into that OT space, there's thousands and thousands of different types of widgets out there that come from all over the world. To your point, the life cycle on this stuff is very different compared to the IT world, right? You're measuring things in decades versus a few years. And the OT ecosystem, as I like to call it, isn't really driving how to better protect and secure connected physical systems. At least, and I work in that space, right? And I'm up against that even with my own company, against engineering leaders, very smart people, but clients that aren't asking for it. And if the conversation does come up, Josh, it's like, well, that's IT's problem. They got it. They're working on it. And then my response is, well, if they're working on it, then why aren't they telling us what we should be doing with all this technology we're getting ready to bring into your manufacturing facility, right? For this new line, this $20 million packaging line that you're asking us to design and build and implement and start up and commission for you, right? And so that to me is, how do you get those two worlds to join together? I've got a partner in his position, especially when you talk about IT leadership, CISO, CIO, they have the responsibility, but they don't have the authority necessarily to deal with those OT guys because of safety and production and operations when it comes to those machine centers, right? I mean, that to me is where the rub comes in. I think the OT ecosystem has to get better at this per se and start driving the better solutions and strategies on how to secure, protect connected physical systems.
I think that the tipping point will be when we start seeing more attackers, particularly targeting OT with OT outcomes. We've seen a lot of targeting OT to use that as the soft, squishy underbelly to get into an IT system. We can go back a decade or more with the legendary fish tank attack in Las Vegas, where they got in through some OT that was monitoring fish tank temperature to then pivot into the corporate network and get banking account information and 1099s for all the high rollers. But now, particularly with ransomware, with the right mentality, somebody could take over and hijack an entire factory. We've seen.
I think it's going to be AI. I think just what we saw last week with the OpenAI escape from their model that got away. I think that's going to be an eye opener because I know the vulnerabilities on the plant floor, Josh. They don't patch. That stuff sits out there for years, decades, and never been touched, right? Vulnerabilities out the wazoo, known exploits, right? And all kinds of remote access into that facility to support them. And I think AI might be the wake-up call. I see control systems, even not even malicious behavior, bad behavior, is sometimes it's just the client's own behavior is very disruptive to them because they don't have visibility into the fact that somebody made a PLC change. Or that IT doing their due diligence is scanning the network to try to get as much information about the environment as they can, and it's disruptive to those control systems and shuts them off, blocks their comms.
Absolutely. I was doing some contract work with a large state government, their Department of Transportation, and I seen firsthand where a engineer down at a local level did not pay attention to the rules that were put in place for what VLANs devices got put on. And they put almost an entire city's worth of traffic lights on a production IT VLAN. And of course, what does IT do? They kick off a tenable scan once a week to scan everything. And it's a traffic light. That's a safety item. So it's got a designated fail safe methodology in it. It sees I'm getting pinged by this thing. It's hit every port. I'm being attacked. So I roll over, play possum, play dead. I flip over into four-way flash, which if you paid attention in driving school, whatever year that was, you know that makes it a stop sign. But imagine in a major metropolitan area where every traffic light now becomes a stop sign, and only about half the people remember that a flashing red light is a stop sign.
Great example. It's because it goes safe, right? If I can't communicate, AGVs, right? Robots. If I can't communicate, I stop. I'm going to quit moving because I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So I've lost my comms, even temporarily, right? I will stop. And if you're moving production on the plant floor, I work for a very large adult beverage beer manufacturer. If we lost one packaging line, just one, that was 80 grand an hour in loss, regardless of what caused the downtime. Forget that. Unplanned, unscheduled downtime next to safety are your two top priorities in any manufacturing facility.
And it's something as simple as putting antivirus on the Windows XP workstation that's running that PLC group. Oh, it's going to flag something, and now you've shut down an entire line. That now you have to go through and validate everything. So even though it's only a 30-second fix, from a technical standpoint, you still have an hour worth of work to validate everything is back to safe working condition before you can turn the switch back on.
Yeah, and get QA to approve it. No, you're 100% correct. That's another great point because even as an engineering company, we typically don't put EDR and AV on HMIs, right? That human machine interface that you're describing, because of its disruption, because of the resource intensity that it has when it fires off its scan. So we typically ignore that. And what we've seen happen is IT organizations, especially for a lot of clients that have moved to VM infrastructure to run those OT applications, they'll come in after the fact and do that. And then we run into a lot of the problems you're describing, whether it's XP 7, Windows 7, 10, which believe it or not, we still find Windows 7 and XP in some cases, especially 7. And so we don't do that. And we've got, and if I have 10 clients, Josh, I might have one that wants assistance on how to tune and configure an EDR package in an OT environment. And even then, it creates constant diligence because of you take an update, somebody makes a change. Well, everything that you did to fine tune that EDR package running on that HMI, one is when's the most opportune time to run it? Maybe you don't want to run it during production. Or if somebody pushes a patch out to it, and all of a sudden what you had set, all of a sudden now is undone. And now you're back to square one, potentially having to fine tune again because of an update that somebody pushed out.
Oh, it's no different than your IT folks putting a remote management software on those machines because I want to be able to reach out and touch that. But then incidentally, that's doing things like running Intune or doing policy configuration through GPO that, oh, now you push this and now half your PLCs don't work because the specific exceptions in that GPO policy that system was configured with were overwritten by the standard blanket policy that matches your CIS 1 or 2 controls or your DISA-STIG benchmarking because you didn't think about what's that impact to those type of machines.
Yeah. So I changed gears a little bit. So I see you've got black hat on your shirt, and we talked before we kicked off this podcast of the events that you're going at. So what are you seeing at a lot of these cybersecurity events, shows, in regards to this conversation we're having? How do you see that conversation unfolding? Are one or the right personas at these events, especially from a manufacturing perspective? What challenges are they talking about, or is it just about technology and about AI? I mean, what's going on in those? I attend events, but usually I attend the OT events, and some of them don't even talk about cybersecurity at all. I went to an automation event in Chicago in June. It was all about robotics and automation, everything from very fine, small robotics and drones to big machines that move cars around and to weld and stuff. But cybersecurity wasn't even a dent in the conversation.
I think at much of the large events, what you'll find are vendors that focus on OT discovery, not actual OT management, not OT security operations, not figuring out what good looks like in an OT environment, just what is in an OT environment. And I would argue that most of the big names probably get you 80 to 90% of full your discovery. But you know as well as I do in manufacturing, you have a lot of air gap systems. You have a lot of systems that have limited connectivity where it's very time based, it's only connected for these short periods of time, that tools like that are just going to miss. And what I'm seeing from IT, CIOs and CISOs is that they're often told, you handle all the IT, keep your hands off of OT because that's the business and we don't want you messing with that because, as you mentioned, an hour of downtime is $80,000. And we don't want you mucking with that because you understand email and firewalls and routing and switching, but they don't necessarily have the experience to understand what the second, third order effects are of making changes to how the network routes traffic to a PLC, or what a delay in traffic by adding additional layers of security or forcing encryption in between, where now you've got a delay on a system that operates in milliseconds. They just don't have the background. We haven't built a course that I've seen on OT for the CIO CISO. We've built a whole lot of, here's some OT specific stuff and here's a whole lot of good stuff for IT, but we don't really crosstalk between of where those two things actually connect and why they should connect.
Now, maybe that's something you and I collaborate on a curriculum for the IT executives on how to tackle OT, because I think a lot of executives don't want to get involved with that OT environment because of quality, safety. To me, I equate it, it's like picking up a porcupine. No matter where you try to reach in and pick it up, you're just going to get stuck. So you just leave it alone, right? That air gap conversation, to me, that's a myth. There's certain industries, don't get me wrong, that have true air gap systems, nuclear power plants, for example. The military, probably with some of their weapon systems. I get that. But most of the time, when we're in a manufacturing facility and somebody tells me that those systems are air gap, it's not true. There's always a jump box. There's always a gateway. There's a wireless WAP in there, a cellular cradle point modem in the mix. There's a cable that's there, to your point, temporary once in a while when somebody needs again, they go connected into the plant network for pass through, but then they forget to take it off. I walk in with my laptop and I go down there and connect it in that environment, and I got cellular on my laptop and I'm connected to the internet. So again, I think a lot of OT people will say that to keep IT out of their hair. But that machine's not on the network. It's not true. It's rare, very, very rare are those control systems not connected to a network that has outbound access.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it's air gapped right now. Does it stay air gapped? Does it stop? Do you have any kind of processes or procedures that stop it from being connected to the internet? Everyone walks around and they've got a cell phone that they can create a hotspot. Did you take the wireless card out? Did you take the NIC out? Oh, you didn't? Then it's just not connected right now.
Yeah. If we go into 10 plants, 8 of them will let us take our laptops and go plug it right into their network without any research, investigative work on it at all. None, zero. Nothing to say, here's an audit report on my machine before I connect it into your device that's been scanned and approved to be here. 8 and 10. Allow that to happen.
And that's wild because your IT folks would typically never allow that to occur on their IT network because they just go, that's insane. I don't know what naughty bits you have on your laptop. I don't know what malware that you're going to propagate ransomware through my network. Why would you do that on your, what I would argue for manufacturing is your crown jewel technology network, because that's the thing that generates your revenue. All the IT stuff is just corollary to that, that lets you do the billing and the day-to-day operations outside of the thing that you're making.
Yeah, a lot of it is driven by expediency. I just need to get back up and running. I don't care what it takes. Just get back up and running. I've actually had OT people flat out say security just gets in the way of getting things done. And my response to that is, yeah, we used to say that about safety until people started losing their fingers and their eyes and their toes or their life. And so we had to start putting safety protocols in place, right? I think cybersecurity, the OT space from a vernacular has been named incorrectly. It should be like digital safety or something. Something that makes it look through the lens of safety versus just cybersecurity. It's just a thought to put it in a different place and treat it differently than they do.
If I ruled the OT world, OT cybersecurity would be another OSHA requirement, just like everything else.
I like that. I've had those thoughts and have written that and talked about that. But yeah, that's why isn't it? Right? Again, and regulations are hit or miss on whether they have teeth or not in some of these environments. Certain industries, it's hard to beat. I mean, even when they were requiring at a minimum asset inventory that was coming through DHS and TSA and through CISA for critical infrastructure, whether it be rail, whether it be air, whether it be water, whether it be power. What is your asset inventory? And is it accurate? And is it up to date? And a lot of clients, they wouldn't even get to the point you go to do manually, and it's a snapshot in time. You do once a year or every other year versus coming in and put a tool in. It's doing continuously monitoring of that. They still have this stigma of these OT folks that you're scanning their network, even though I put a device down there that is just passively listening. Or my response to them is you're already doing it because there's engineering workstations that you're allowing into that space. And if I'm speaking the same language as the engineering workstations talking to those PLCs, whether it be Siemens S7, Rockwell SIP, Emerson, Delta V, Modbus, TCP, I'm already communicating with those devices today to help you maintain, support that machine center, right? And these tools will do the same. I can mimic an engineering workstation. I can sit there like a wire shark and just mirror traffic and do deep packet inspection so I can at least build a baseline of your asset inventory, make, model, firmware version, which gives me the CVEs, end of life, end of support information that you might want on it, all just by listening to the network. And these OT guys still think you're down there scanning their network because they're used to IT doing that. Back to your pen testing conversation a while ago, where pen testing on a control system environment that's in production is a bad idea. But then if you do pen testing, well, you have to do it during downtime. Well, what good is that? Because everything's offline and down. There's very little to no traffic on the network. You can't even get to the machines.
And to your point, it's one of those things where it comes down to that scenario where, yes, we're compliant because we've met whatever this minimum standard is, but compliance really isn't security. Compliance is the bare minimum you have to do. It should be your starting line. This is like where we start, and then security gets better from there versus often what you see, particularly in manufacturing, where your compliance is your end goal. It doesn't matter if you're still completely vulnerable. I met the compliance, so I get the check mark in the box. And we've kind of seen that where, particularly with OT devices, you go into a plant and you talk to the guy who's managing the OT network, and he has a box of PLCs that he has taken off of one place, and it's because it was a decommissioned line, and oh, I'm not throwing that away. And have a PLC go out because it's 30 years old. He'll go to the box, take a PLC, plug it back in, and did he check to see if it had current firmware, if it was actually doing the thing that you want to do? No, it's a PLC. I just plug it in and it does what I told it to do.
It's like grading your own paper, right? You're allowed to provide your own grade on the paper that you wrote in a lot of cases. Versus even audit. I've got clients that fail their audits, but they still can't punch through to meet the audit requirements in order to get asset inventory entirely in a manufacturing facility. I still see that today, and I'll see an OT guys be like, "Yeah, you're not putting anything on my network." Like, well, how are you gonna do asset inventory? To crawl through a 3.8 million square foot facility, to go through hundreds of panels that you have out there that got thousands of devices in this particular line, to manually inventory that versus me dropping something in here that can extract that information and build that baseline for you in a matter of minutes, days, hours, versus being in here for a month, 2, three with an army of people crawling through your plant, or waiting for a downtime window that comes once or twice or three times a year. And most of those are in conjunction with other activities that need to be done. The only reason why I'm taking down the plant is because I'm going to do maintenance, I'm going to replace hardware, I'm adding equipment, I'm cleaning, I'm fumigating, whatever it might be that they're doing. And then you add all these other things on. And then you got a dozen projects going on at one time in the plant, taking advantage of that downtime window.
And all the things are getting changed because you're retooling. So you have to take everything off the line and then reformat it for whatever the new thing is. So what you started baselining at the beginning of the downtime is completely different than what you have at the end. And what's kind of wild is that compared to an IT environment, OT environments are fairly static. You're going to have what you have.
Now be careful on that one. It's more dynamic than you think.
It's dynamic, but you're not seeing hundreds and hundreds of changes every day. You're not seeing a laptop come in, laptop go out, people spinning up servers in that environment. It's a little more stable. You're going to have the normal PLCs getting removed, getting replaced. You're bringing on a new line.
Changes to somebody will do an online edit on a PLC. We see rogue assets, malicious IPs, devices coming and going, applications coming and going, ports opening and closing, secure protocols, default passwords, you name it. I mean, and it becomes overwhelming. When you first fire these tools up, the client, they get alert fatigue because they've got thousands and thousands coming at them constantly. And as far as the events that are going on in there, especially if you got a fleet of 30, 40, 50 plants, you can just imagine their eyes are rolling in the back of their head because it takes a while to start what we call operationalizing the platform, localizing it so that the taxonomy of the language in there matches the plant language so that when they see an event, they know that that's the filler PLC on line 7 versus just getting an IP and a MAC address and going through those types of activities to make it so it's more workable for them. And it takes a while to be able to do that when you get clients that are actually making a stab at trying to improve their OT cybersecurity. So it's and we need more people in the space, right? It's just not there. A lot of these OT guys, they've been in these plants for decades. And the new folks coming in, they're just their jobs just keep the place running best they can. That's job one. Just keep it running.
I think the big thing is we've just got to figure out a way to get people interested in OT. That way we can get that pipeline going. And part of it's OT is not as sexy as dealing with the current thing as agentic AI. It's not doing pen testing. It's these things that are super critical. It's almost you can almost liken it to blue collar IT.
Yeah, great point. Yeah. And how do you get people that want to work in a dirty, potentially dangerous location that's out in the middle of nowhere, whether it's out in the ocean, in the Gulf, or sitting up there in the South 40 of Iowa at a food plant? Because you can think globally, but you still got to act locally, which means you got to be grounded in how that place operates and how it's laid out and find all the skeletons that are in it, especially if it's a plant like the plant I was talking about up in Detroit, how the damn thing was built in the early 40s. All right. Nice facility, don't get me wrong, but it's probably got 50,000 OT assets in it.
Yeah. One of the things I tell my students to try to get them excited about OT is that it is a field of almost unlimited opportunity for growth. Because to your point, the folks that are doing it are mine and your age. We want to retire at some point. Somebody has to come in behind us to be able to run this stuff because we all want to eat. We want to be able to turn the light on and the power comes on and lights turn on. But someone needs to do that. So I look at folks and tell them, like, you can go into IT and you're going to work at a help desk and you're going to work your way up and it's going to be the slow trudge up to whatever your end goal is. But in OT, there's massive need for it. And because there's need for it and there's turnover, there's potentially a very quick path up a ladder that if you're looking for title and prestige and having pay, there's a quick path if you go to OT and you're willing to work on site and willing to go work in places that maybe other people don't want to work. out on an oil rig in the Gulf, or to your point, in a meatpacking plant in the middle of Iowa, there are opportunities everywhere because every place has this. Every Amazon fulfillment center has a hundreds of thousands of PLCs and an OT network running all of that.
They do. Yeah, no, you're right. And my recommendation, if you're for the students, would be take an internship in an industrial environment, right? Know what it means. I call it putting on the uniform. That's your PPE for this particular type of environment you're working in, and spend some time in industrial facilities, right? They would welcome it, right? They're looking for folks. They're always looking for folks, and it's a good way. You bring your technical skills that you're after. You keep working on those, but we always seem to do better working with engineering students who typically, as they're working towards graduation, working in a manufacturing facility for a summer or two, so that they know what the job is, regardless of whether it's mechanical, whether it's electrical, cybersecurity, application, software development, whatever it might be. But your internship programs requires you to work in manufacturing facilities is ideal before you graduate.
That's absolutely critical. Is internships and apprenticeships are great ways to explore this space, because ultimately the need is there. We want folks to come into this field, and if we have to do those things to entice them, we're doing them. And I've seen that across the board in the OT environment. There is lots and lots of folks trying to pull folks into OT. It's just a matter of getting that message out.
Yeah. Well, even the vendors in this space are hungry for resources, and you talk about paying well. They pay really well. You want to be a system engineer working for one of these OT IDS platforms or some of these system integrators, the money's pretty good. It really, really is. Anything that you'd like to cover that we didn't cover? Any topic in this space that we didn't touch upon that you wanted to get out?
I think the big thing is OT might not be the coolest thing out there, but it's absolutely the most critical thing out there, because it is how we feed the nation. It's how we power the nation. It's how we have hospitals, clean drinking water. It's how we make the nation run. So if you think OT isn't where it's at, all you have to do is look around and go, everything I touch touches OT.
I love it. You're speaking my words. I agree with you 100% on that. Yeah, I do. I really do appreciate it. Well, Josh, thank you for your time today. Good luck at Black Hat. Maybe we follow up. I'd like to maybe catch up with you after Black Hat, DEF CON, just to see what you picked up on and learned while you're out there. So maybe we connect a few weeks when you get back from your travels.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please leave us a review or let us know. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.